Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Awesemo Live Before Lock show. This one's for the RBC Canadian Open, not for the something going on at the Centurion Club in London, Ben. This is for the RBC Canadian Open, where DraftKings is offering up $200,000 to first place in preparation for next week's U.S. Open, where we're going to get not one but two, but three millionaire makers. And we've got a chance this week, Ben, to nail some good picks and maybe get into those big dollar contests a lot cheaper. We'll talk about that in our lineup section there. Maybe how to enter some of those satellite contests to get into that contest a little bit cheaper. But before all that, let's go ahead and do our normal routine here and go over a couple of things that you need to know for this week's RBC Canadian Open, starting with the amount of withdrawals we've had this week, Ben. It is a large amount. Now, typically we do get that because of the 36 holes of golf that these guys got to play on Monday to try to get in the U.S. Open, but it seems like more than in years past, doesn't it?
It's a lot, and it's not stopping. CT Pan was maybe my favorite play on the slate. Now he's out. Patrick Reed is out. Shank is out. So we just have to keep an eye on it. I would hope that the majority of guys have made their decision in terms of if they're playing this week. But man, it seems like it's never ending. And a field that didn't have a ton of depth, it got that much worse.
Yeah, and of course, the second anybody withdraws, they're, crying the live tour here. I don't think that's the case with all of them. Certainly with Patrick Reed, that was the case. But just to clarify who we got CT Pan, Nate Lashley, Patrick Reed, Jarrett Wolf, Pat Perez, Adam Schenk, and Luke List. I'm pretty sure all of those guys actually made the printed DraftKings list. So careful, make sure they are not in your player pool this week. Now, moving on to the weather here that we're going to discuss. It looks like maybe the worst weather is coming tomorrow morning in a little 1 or 2 hour window. Doesn't look like much of an advantage checking out our PGA weather splits tool. Ben, you seen the same thing as well?
Yeah, I don't think it's a huge advantage or disadvantage. I don't expect anything massive. As I always say, if you want to build to a split, you can absolutely do that on some of the teams. But when I look at my teams, I look at what I'm doing, I don't see anything that's a major overhaul. Like I said, I'm more concerned about who's left in this field. We got a lot of new players this week and kind of trying to put the pieces together.
Yeah, we do. We've got a couple of new names this week. I'm excited to get to them. But first, let's go over a couple of waves going out in the morning. See if we can pin down a couple of guys that may be in play for a first round lead. Now, again, tomorrow morning, we are going to see some difficult weather, possibly a shower and a storm that'll come through. It'll leave a little bit of wind behind it. But going off first, you got Matthias Schwab. I thought I'd bring him up because he's a buddy of ours from the DP World Tour. He's had a couple of good starts over here. What do you think about this more technical track for a guy that is used to playing those, certainly over on the European Tour?
So I like everything about him, except maybe one of the more important things. He's just not really playing well right now. And I do think that can turn pretty quickly, but he's a guy we've played in Europe before. He's come over here. He's top 5 to WGC. He's going out with Wiley and Lebioda, so it's not as strong. I feel like Davis Riley and Cam Young have been in that first group in weeks past. Obviously, that's a different class of player when you're talking first-round leader, but at the same time, in this field, I do think some of these early guys will get off to a quick start.
Yeah, I also agree there, even with maybe the weather not being as ideal as they want it. Then we get into the all-Canadian grouping of Adam Hadwin, Mackenzie Hughes, and Mike Weir. Now, we're going to have a Canadian section on our rank up here, but you like Adam Hadwin's form coming in. He seemed to be, in his interview, how do I say perturbed? I'll use that word. That's a new word for me today.
Okay.
That he wasn't offered any money from the Live Golf Tour, never contacted. So is he going to use that revenge and break the streak of non-Canadian winners at the Canadian Open this week?
Yeah, I mean, Adam Hadwin's a name that certainly he's got as you mentioned, the hometown narrative going on. I didn't know that he didn't get that chance to get that Saudi money, but he's someone that has flipped the switch recently, gained across the board in the last start. I think there's a pretty good spot for him. So he feels overpriced. I think most people feel overpriced in this field, and that's just something we have to deal with this week.
For sure. Now, I want to draw your attention to the little purple banner here above me. Yahoo, of course, the sponsor of our show here this week. They've got a $5,000 to first place, $20 buy-in contest for this week's RBC Canadian Open. They've also got an $8 buy-in with $1,000 going to first, and they've got contests all the way down to 50 cents. So if you want to just get your feet wet, they've got contest buy-ins of all different types. Check them out. Best way to get involved with Yahoo is to sign up, be a new user, and going to get a free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum if you go on and do that. We give awesome projections for that. I use them each and every week. We tailor in the different salary structure that Yahoo has going on over there. So take advantage of that offer and sign up today. So let's keep now moving on into our ranking here, Ben, where we're going to talk about the 3 top golfers in the field. And for me, it's a pretty easy one this week. Scotty Scheffler, Justin Thomas, and Rory McIlroy are your 3 best options. For me, it's really easy. The $600 and $400 means all the difference in the world to me. And I know that Thomas, don't get me wrong, he won, the PGA, obviously. Rory's been playing just as good as these other 2, except for having a number 1 next to the name at the end of it. So I'm fine going to Rory. He'll be my 40 or 50% owned guy this week, and the other 2 will be slightly lower than the field, I think.
I'm basically in line with you. Certainly, I classify them as the big 3 this week. You're not going to go wrong with any of them on paper. Scheffler's had the best year of anyone. JT just won a major, and Rory's done everything you want except win in recent weeks. The stats have been fantastic. Tee to green, dominant, and his short game is not a huge issue. So I'm with you. I always kind of prefer Rory. You're talking about the cheapest, and in a week like this, every dollar counts. Mike in chat just said some real uncomfortable lineup building this week. I second that. It is not a great week to build in the sense that you're not going to feel comfortable. I like weeks like that, but certainly the savings makes a big difference.
Goes to show you how the PGA DFS landscape has evolved over the years. I can just remember Colin Morikawa 2.5 years ago when he first burst onto the scene here at the RBC Canadian Open. Nobody knew who he was. Now we can't even get through the first 7 minutes of a show without somebody in chat bringing up my hot take. I mean, it's where we're going. So we'll see.
That guy is, I've heard his name more than once this week, which I would have set the over under at just flat 0. So
we'll talk about him later on the show. We'll save it. But just goes to show you where the landscape is going. I love it. Okay, let's talk about the second 10K, guys. I think this is going to be a little bit better conversation than the top part because maybe we're going to differ here. Cam Smith, Shane Lowry, and Sam Burns. Sam Burns, after he wins, sometimes he goes away for a little while. I'm going to take that approach with him. Pretty simple. Shane Lowry, yeah, he's been okay. Don't get me wrong. He had the 3rd place at the RBC, and I think the 3rd place at the Masters or something like that. Very good the week before, but last 2 weeks haven't been great. Whereas Cam Smith, when this guy plays and makes the weekend, he's in the top 15 of PGA DFS scoring. In fact, 9 of 9 times this season that he's made the cut, he's ended up in the top 15 of PGA DFS scoring. That's just what he does. He goes on streaks. He birdies 6 in a row. He makes a triple. He throws in a late eagle on Sunday. That means absolutely nothing except for PGA DFS points. So I'm playing Cam Smith this week in accordance with Rory McIlroy. Mix them in with one of the Canadians we'll talk about in a minute. But how about you? Are you going to buy into Cam Smith or are you going to continue the fade?
So I'm not opposed to Cam Smith. I definitely don't like him as much as the guys right above. Like if you're telling me I could get Rory or Cam Smith, I'm going to take Rory basically every time. But the thing about Cam Smith, you can look at it 2 different ways. I do think that his off the tee game could get him in trouble here. That is the glaring weakness of his game. And there are some tree lined and technical, the rough could be an issue. He lost 5 strokes off the tee at the Players and he still won the tournament. So he has shown, even if I'm right about that, it's not like, oh, if Cam Smith loses off the tee, he can't play well. No, he can. He can just gain 11 strokes with the putter. He gained 9 strokes with the short game last week. It's ridiculous. So I think he is in play. I don't really like the other 3. There's 6 guys north of 10K. We talked about the first 3. To me, the second batch of 3 is much weaker. They're all great players, but I really prefer the first 3 if it's close.
Yep, me too. Totally agree. But again, like I said, I do like Cam Smith. I think I'll probably even slide him into my main lineup. It depends. Again, we'll talk about how low we want to go this week. Rory is the first guy I clicked. I think he's fine. I think with everything going on in the game of golf, Rory wants to be front and center as much as he can. And listen, he's in a place to pick up a lot of money. These guys that are leaving sponsorship money on the table. And Rory has positioned himself to be kind of that front runner, hero type look. And I believe he's going to get a lot of phone calls over the next couple of weeks in terms of money being offered him. So keep an eye out for Rory McIlroy in that front. Now let's go to the Canadians here. I'm going to throw in Adam Svensson too, who I didn't list. Tyler, I'm sorry. He's down at 7,100. But start off with Corey Connors at 96. Then you got Adam Hadwin, 93. Mackenzie Hughes, 84. And Nick Taylor, 7,700. Ben, it's been a long time since a Canadian has won the Canadian Open. Corey Connors, if he gains strokes putting, will he break that this week?
Yeah, I mean, certainly I think it's pretty obvious that Hadwin's a good player, but I think Corey Connors is the most likely Canadian to do just that. And the thing that's interesting about him, he has a profile. He's a pure ball striker with subpar around the green and not the best putter. He hadn't been showing that really. So at Wells Fargo, he lost on the approach. He followed it up with a miscut at the PGA where he lost severely on the approach. He goes to Muirfield and he gains 8 strokes on the approach. That is vintage Corey Connors, comes in 13th. So I think he heads into this with a little momentum. I like the spot for Connors. He's firmly in play. Could see him winning. Absolutely.
Yeah, me too. Now maybe you don't have to choose either, but how about the lower priced ones, the Nick Taylor, Adam Spence's? You like them any more than the other guys in that range, let's say. Not so much because they're Canadian, but maybe they stick out to you for other reasons.
Svensson, I think in a low 7K range, that's pretty devoid of talent. He's not going to grab you a lot of placement points, and you're going to need better than that, but he has made 3 straight cuts. You're choosing like him or Sneds, him or Molinax, him or Whaley. I think that's a pretty reasonable combo to have. Nick Taylor's, I think, a little tougher because you've got like Rogers, Long, Rye. Those are pretty good players with him. So I think the lower you go, the easier it is.
Yeah, irons have looked better for Nick Taylor, which is certainly a good sign. All right, let's go into our other studs rank them now, which last week, Ben, we listed 4 and all 4 were in the top 10. I'm going to say it's going to happen again this week. Just rarely happens. In fact, we didn't really have much bad to say about him. This week, I think I'm going to have a little bit worse things to say, or meaner. I'm not even sure which way to label that. But still, nonetheless, Harold Varner is his highest price, maybe all season, at 9,700. Ty Hatton, a reasonable price, 9,500. Tony Finau playing some good golf at 94. Sebastian Munoz also playing good golf at 92. So for me, I think I'm going to start with Finau. When he plays well and he's in good form, I think his game translates pretty much to anywhere. Varner's the sticker shock, though. Coming off that 45 on Sunday, it'll be interesting to see how he bounces back.
Varner's a tough one. I think that, on paper, there's a lot to like with him. He's got a 2nd and a 3rd at RBC Heritage, which I do think is a comp, but he feels the most overpriced. He's a good player, but to me, Tony Finau and Ty Hatton are just simply better golfers than Varner when I look at that. So I'd probably go there. I have no problem with Varner, particularly, he made the old triple, double, triple. I'm not sure I've ever seen that before.
You're forgetting a birdie in there. Double, triple, yes. Birdie, triple. Yeah.
Disturbing. But, like I said, he's a player. He's going to win on tour at some point. I do think I'm with you, though. Tony Finau's playing good golf. He's in the mid-9s. Tony Finau is starting point for me, or second man in.
Yeah, Tony Finau, definitely an interesting name to watch. Then we've got a batch, which I could have included Varner in this, of overpriced golfers, given the field strength. Again, very top heavy, huge drop off when you get outside of the 10s. I mean, one could even say it's a huge drop off when you get outside of the top 4 or 5 golfers here in this field. So Sahith Theegala coming in off of his maybe career best performance, a T5 at an invitational. Huge start for him, coming in at 8,700, though. Justin Rose, you profiled him a couple of weeks ago, says he is not going to play well in a PGA Tour event in a while. He gets ready for these majors, and maybe he shows up gaining 20 strokes putting in him. And then you've got Rasmus Højgaard, who's getting a start here this week at 8,300, and Keith Mitchell off of one good round is 9,000. So default for me is to play Sahith Theegala, but I'm not getting him at 6,500 this week.
This is where I think, the uncomfortable build comes in. People have been playing Theegala, who's a mega talent, as their 4th, 5th, 6th man in. He's going to be your 2nd or 3rd man in, most likely, in your lineups here. Killa Keith, same thing. Oh, he's a great scorer. If he makes the cut, he's going to outscore his placement points. You can't really play that game at 9K. He's got to just straight play well. So I get it with these guys. Rasmus, to me, is probably where I'd go just because he's the cheapest. I think they're all high upside, talented guys. Theegala, to me, is the most likely to play well. Not going to really Justin Rose is a tough one for me right now. I think he's playable just because the field is thinned out with guys like Patrick Reed missing, but he's shown nothing. He's missed 4 or 5 cuts. The only one he made was the PGA Championship. I'm pretty adamant that he's trying to peak for specific weeks right now, not just play good golf consistently.
Definitely. It seems that, and when you watch him play, it certainly kind of showcases that. One thing I wanted to bring up about this range and bring it up right now is, would you rather pay $8,700 for Sahith Theegala and $10,500 for Rory McIlroy, or $8,700 for Cameron Young and $10,500 for Rory McIlroy? And I know the answer. It's a rhetorical question at this point, right? But it goes to show you next week's pricing for the U.S. Open has Rory McIlroy, Justin Thomas, and Scottie Scheffler all the exact same prices they are this week. So it's like, okay, well, then pretty much you look at it and say, which week is the 8K more likely to outperform or beat Rory? And it's not this week. So for me, I'm getting pushed out of this range a lot, saying there's no way I'm going to reasonably say Theegala and Rose are going to beat Rory this week. Not going to happen. Where next week I can get Brooks Koepka, Cameron Young, and Joaquin Niemann at the same prices against Rory. So for me, I'd rather play Rory this week. I'd rather play Justin. Just deal with the variability that we're going to have, and we'll get into some of the names that I'm going to have to be clicking on this week if I want to employ that strategy. So I think we're pretty much done there with the ranking. We can go on to a couple more guys in the Make the Cut segment. And let's start off with the guy you mentioned, Aaron Rai. I profiled him last Sunday as a guy that was struggling with his irons over the first couple of rounds there at Muirfield, but finally popped off on Sunday and caught him. This guy that's ranked inside the top 50 this year on strokes gained on the approach. So on a tactical course, should Aaron Rai be highly priced as he is? And do you like him to play all 4 rounds?
So I do think that he's certainly got some reps now on the PGA Tour. He's shown he can handle it. Stats aren't blowing me away by any stretch of the imagination, but he has made 5 of 6 cuts. The range has thinned out because CT Pan is now withdrawn. So I get it. I say he makes the cut. I'm not, and this is where I think our tools are so important, whether it's the ownership tool or the leverage tool. I don't think that Aaron Rai far and away is the play over guys like Adam Long and Hubbard and Taylor, but I do think he is playable. So I will say that he makes the cut, finds the weekend.
Yeah. And I just saw Mike Campbell's note about Theegala, and we paid $10K for him at Puerto Rico or Dominican, whichever one it was. And it's totally true. We didn't have Rory McIlroy in that field, though. So it's a little relative in that sense. Okay, next guy I want to talk about, Mark Hubbard. When I look at his ownership, it looks like it's going to be very low because maybe CT Pan, again, it'll be updated in the next couple of minutes here. I was just talking to Alex, if it isn't already. I think that some ownership will funnel down to Rai and to Hubbard here, but I still think he'd be low owned. I think he's in play, and I do believe he plays all 4 days.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think we need to see exactly with some, Pat Perez and Patrick, like that ownership, I know is somewhat early in the week, but still the mindset, those would have been shares that will now be dumped onto these other players. These ranges are much thinner, and that has a tangible difference for guys like Aaron Rai.
It does. It certainly does. So Patrick Rogers, actually both of our hot takes last week, they let us down. So let's go right back to him this week. Let's talk and see. Alex Smalley is on an every other week scenario right now. Good start, miscut, good start, miscut, good start, miscut. So hopefully I got him bouncing back this week. I think he does play all 4 days. But is this the course for Patrick Rogers to bounce back on?
Yeah, Patrick Rogers, certainly disappointing, as you mentioned. I look at the stats, and I'm still kind of a believer. He gained off the tee. The irons were disappointing, and he lost the putter. That was his first negative strokes gained putting in a month. If he can return from that, I think that Patrick Rogers can make the weekend, will make the weekend. And sadly, without CT Pan, Patrick Rogers is becoming more and more important by the second for me.
Yeah, can understand why. Cam Champ is also in this area. He looks to be popular, but I find when he tends to be popular, he plays a little bit better, whether it's just, gamers or the general public have figured out Cameron Champ, or it just so happens that way. So Cameron Champ, the one, I guess, thing would be that it's a par 70 with 3 par 5s. His elite premium scoring ability, 7,800 in a field like this. I think it makes sense. But would you rather go to the betting market here and say, listen, when Champ plays well, he's top 10 or better. When he doesn't, he misses the cut. Kind of what I took with the Brendan Steele approach last week.
I like that particularly. I use that with Matthew Wolff a lot because the downside is horrendous miscuts where they're not competitive and their upside is winning the tournament. There's not as much middle ground. So I can do that with Cameron Champ. And if I bet, say, Champ top 10, if he comes in 11th or he misses the cut, it's the same in betting. Whereas with DFS, it's completely different. There is so much more, nuance to it. I like that approach with the guy this volatile because I think the downside on him is a pretty bad miscut even in this spot.
Yeah, and possibly in certain contests, rather highly owned. So again, I really think that's the best way to go with Champ. Tyler Duncan, he's been getting a little talk this week. In fact, I just saw the PGA Tour tweeting out and touting him, interestingly enough. But on some comp courses, he does have a couple of good starts, a couple of top 25s. RBC had a top 15, and most recently at Colonial, I believe he had another good start there. So Tyler Duncan, 7,500. Is he in play for you? And does he play all 4 days?
T-Dunks, yeah. I mean, this again just shows like Tyler Duncan for a couple weeks, he's been like 6,300 and 1%, and people have been like, maybe as a flyer. Now he's a mid-range play and he's getting some talk. 15th at Charles Schwab, 59th at Byron Nelson, a couple miscuts before that. That's about what you're going to find in this range. I think the most important thing with T-Dunks, this is the type of course that he excels at. He's got good showings at RSM, at Heritage, at Wyndham. I think there's some comps in there. I say he does make the weekend.
Yeah, I've got him playing all 4 days as well. Now, we just talked about Cameron Champ on the betting side. You, just in case people are just joining us or are new to our channel, we've got some OddsShopper stuff going on. That is our other YouTube channel focused just primarily on sports betting. Ben, you've got a couple of shows for golf each week, right?
Yes, sir. OddsShopper YouTube, talking about all things. And it's important because if you are playing DFS, there are other ways to get some exposure to hedge some things, as you've talked about a lot, even if it's for that. So you can head over to OddsShopper YouTube, talk about some of the best bets. US Open next week, I'm sure, with plenty of content. It's going to be a good time.
It is. Make sure you like and subscribe to both of our channels here. Get notified when these shows come live on the air for you to consume. Great stuff. We always have a lot of fun with it there. All right, let's continue. I've got a name that I think will intrigue you here this week, and I'm going to sell him to you. So obviously, I think he's going to play all 4 days, but I'm going to sell him to you. Here's a guy that over the last couple of years really made his hay putting. I mean, basically, he had nothing else. When he had a really good iron week, his putter would kind of bring him up. He had a chance to win a couple of times last year on tour, but this year, he was ranked close to 200th in strokes gained putting. Then he goes back to the DP World Tour 2 weeks ago in the Netherlands, gained 3.2 strokes for the week. And then last week, they played the Porsche European Open. I think that was in Germany, gained over 8 strokes. So I'm talking about Matt Wallace, who in those 2 starts came in 18th and 5th. He's coming back here, more technical track, 7,400. Is it too early to jump back into him, given how bad he's looked this year? Or is it enough from what we saw over the last 2 weeks?
So I think the product of the field that it's probably enough. I want to caution, I wouldn't allocate more than I think even 10% might be like, you don't need a lot of Matt Wallace, but if you're building for MME, you're trying to win 200K off a $20 lineup, there's no doubt that Matt Wallace upside is winning. He's a player. He's just been non-competitive and he's missed 8 of 9 cuts on the PGA Tour this year. That's just unacceptable for a guy this good. Maybe like Fleetwood-esque, he goes to Europe and he finds some things. Can it translate over here? It remains to be seen. So I would caution, but I see what you're getting at, that maybe a guy that good can rekindle some of his old form.
Yeah, I mean, take a guy like Wallace, 7,400, who has played terrible this year, really, except for the last 2 weeks, against a guy like David Lipsky, who's 7,300. And by and large, I mean, he's played well. I mean, I'd say pretty much all season. I mean, he's made 4 or 5 cuts in this little stretch, a top 10 in there. So to me, as much as I want to go to Matt Wallace, with David Lipsky kind of staring me right in the face right there, it's hard for me, like you said, to get over 10%.
Agree. Yeah. Again, I think you don't want to go if you find a guy who's really struggling that you think is on the form of breaking out, you can get leverage with just a few percentage points. And that's why, again, the tools, the ownership, it's so important because you know what you need to do. I'll use this as an example. In chat, we had a question, any love for Martin Trainer? No for me, but if you like him, you don't need a lot. You could get 5% of him and you'll have at least 5x the field. So you can take a splash and not get crazy with guys like that. And if you get it right, you're still way ahead of the game.
Yeah, no doubt about that. All right, let's go on to Steven Yeager. He's also priced at 7,300. One of the things that I'm looking for this week when I'm doing my rosters and making up my player pool is I want to find a guy that's had a top 10 in the last 5 weeks. Because when you get down this low, there's basically nobody. There's 5 names that you could say this, and there's a couple of guys on the Corn Ferry Tour or Corn Ferry events that they've done it in that I'll bring up. But Yeager's one of them. So can he rekindle the form we saw a couple of weeks ago?
I think that he can. He was someone that I think a lot of people, including me, thought was really trending up to something special, but it was just one off week. I'm not going to throw it all away. 15-6, 38th miscut, elite short game. The irons hopefully will be able to get some of that magic that they had for that 3-week stretch. But man, this is a weak range. You're talking about like him and Grillo. He can hold his own against this range.
Yeah, agreed. Speaking of Grillo, let's talk about him. 4th straight made cut last week. I profiled him on the show a little bit and said, hey, listen, I know the top form's not there, but 4 straight made cuts, especially in a field like this, that's another, you can't even find many guys that have done that.
I mean, again, depth of the field. You're not going to find players who check like, oh, I just want a guy who's playing well, who's historically good, who's making cuts, hitting top 10. Like those don't exist in the sevens here. So we got to take what we can get. Grillo at least is showing some form. He's gained in 3 or 4 with the irons. I don't know. I mean, he's my man. He loves, Memorial was his best showing in quite a while. So I am optimistic that I'm going to play him. There's no doubt that I'm back on the Grillo train. I'm not sure I ever left, to be honest.
Yeah, we've just been waiting for good form.
Yeah.
And there has been a little bit of a break. And even if he gets through, given what I expect the 6 of 6 percentage to be this week, I think something like a tied 20th, certainly maybe not the $20 bend, but certainly the $200 or the 100 or more single entry or 3 entry. I don't think it's impossible for him to find a winning lineup in those contests this week for sure. All right, let's talk about Nick Hardy first. This guy that you and I thought big things from coming into the season, or maybe not huge things, but certainly a guy that we expected to do half of what Cameron Young has done, right? A guy that we really didn't know much about, but his ball striking stats look good. He had some good pedigree. Looks like he got hurt though. He's been out for 6 weeks, comes back at what seems to be his home event on the Corn Ferry Tour and almost wins it, comes in second. So is that enough confidence for him to come back on the PGA Tour? Or is that just a lucky start at his home event?
I don't know about, I'm not going to say it's just straight luck by any stretch, but I look and I kind of want to see a little more. Nick Hardy's a guy that I have tried to get to in spots, hasn't really worked out this year. And unfortunately, he's in a range that it's not a good range, but there are names. And I just like JT Poston, Lipsky. We talked about Schwab, Yeager, Grillo. I'm not sure I want to go to Nick Hardy in this spot, so I'll wait and see. Maybe he strings it together, but I'm not going there.
Are you surprised that he's priced with these guys? Having not played in so long?
I am. I thought that he would be even in this field like 66, 6,700, and I would have some more interest there rather than going up against players who are making cuts on tour week in and week out.
Yeah, I would have loved to have him priced, say, right next to Carlos Ortiz at 6,700. I think that'd have been a good spot. Nobody would have looked to him anyway at that price, given Ortiz being at 6,700. So I have the same sentiment as you. JT Poston, he's a guy that has 2 top 10s in his last 5 starts. Given that stat alone, and being priced at 7,200, is it enough for you to roster? For me, it is.
It is. Shout out to Eric Lindquist yesterday, who kind of got me. I was on Poston. He made a very good case. The comps check out, whether it's Heritage or Wyndham. Yeah, good putter. Everything else comes and goes with the irons and whatnot, but we're going to have to deal with that. And I think that as Chad is pointing out, if you don't want to go into the 6K range and you don't want to go scars and scrubs, you're going to have to attack this low 7 range. And JT Boston's certainly one way to do that.
Yeah, for sure. We talked about Schwab at the top of the show, but since the chat is bringing him back up again and it is the range, can he play all 4 rounds this week? He did. I think he did last week, right? I think he snuck through.
Sure. I mean, yeah, as we talked about
2 weeks ago at the Charles Schwab.
Yeah, he's not playing his best golf. But he's made 3 of 4 cuts, but he's got nothing inside the top 50. He's done nothing on the weekend. I do think this will be his best showing in quite some time. Not that that's saying much, but I expect Schwab to get through and play okay.
Yeah, he's just not playing great. I'd rather go to others. Now, how about this? A guy that has shown us in the last couple of years that he's got some talent, but we don't have a top 10 since the Players. We've made some cuts, but we don't have any good showings. It's Doug Ghim, and he's going to be one of the highest owned in this range. So do you just avoid that and say go down to someone like Brandon Wu, who's got a top 5 in his last 5 starts, or even Wyndham Clark, who's starting to show much better form? Or would you rather just play the chalk and Doug Ghim?
I wouldn't. I think that this is chalk. That's not to say that I think Doug Ghim's just going to play bad automatically, but I'm going to relate it to kind of Cameron Champ. I could do some other things with Doug Ghim. He's a high volatile player who can't putt. And if he doesn't have it, he's going to miss the cut. And so for me, maybe I look to him in the top 20 market. Maybe I look to him in showdown because I do think he's got flashes. Give me guys like Chase Seifert. Give me guys like Brandon Wu, Wyndham Clark, Svensson, who also could be chalky. I'd rather play all of them over Ghim.
Yeah, let's talk about Brandon Wu. Last week turned in one of the best rounds of the week on Friday. Turned in 3 of the best rounds through 3 rounds, was in it again, and then throws up an 80-80 over the weekend. Goes 69-71 to be in the tournament and throws up back-to-back 80s. A player like that, you want to just avoid, or do you think, well, he got to the weekend and played good golf, maybe he'll continue it this week?
Yeah, it's a little of both. I think, again, product of the field, you're going to have to be willing to live with that. You know, it's so funny when you talk about that, because my first thought is how many things on tour would change. Like when guys miss the cut on the number, sometimes that may be better. Like, you know, those could, if they get in, they could end up in 7th after a huge weekend, or they could make the cut on the number and then they shoot as you like an 80-80. And it's like, this guy sucks. It would have been better for him to get cut. So I think some of that stuff is overblown. I try to take it at face value. But when we're talking about these lower guys and these flyers, I think you have to be willing to overlook some ugly showings, particularly on weekends.
Yeah. How about guys that played on Monday? Any trepidation, or on the other side, guys that medalist and played well and are still playing here this week, maybe you want to play them a little bit more?
Yeah, it's tough. Again, I think that's one of those like chicken or the egg type things, because it's like, oh, well, they played really well, but maybe they're focused on now they got to go to the US Open. And that's something they probably didn't have in their schedule. And it's like, well, if they played shitty and they didn't make it, maybe they're more focused here, but they weren't good enough to make the US Open. That's not great. Like Grayson made it. So it shows you if he can make it, everyone should be in there. But
how about the zinger he came back with, though? I mean, he's not holding back against Kevin now, who just
Grayson's not pulling any punches on Twitter. Grayson's made me a lot of money, so I really can't take too many shots at him over the years. But yeah, I don't factor it in, to be honest, just because I truly think for every positive, there's a negative that you could go to the other side with.
Yeah, I don't think there's many positive of golfers below 7,000 this week. In fact, probably the most popular one withdrew from the event. Adam Schenk was likely going to be one of the most popular players down below 7K this week. Let's talk about Carlos Ortiz, 6,700. I want to talk about him because he's a name that people probably recognize down here. But he's not playing great. We haven't seen him come in the top 10 since Mayakoba in November. I don't even know if we've gotten inside the top 20 since then. So what makes us think this week will be any different? Just that he's 6,700?
I think it is mostly price type, exploration, because there's not a lot in the form that has me too interested. And this is where it's going to be very difficult. I want to play Rory. I certainly, I looked at guys like Finau. You mentioned Cam Smith. There's a lot of names up there. How do we unlock those combinations if we're not willing to go into the mid sixes? So I'm going to have to open it up a little bit. Going to be risky though, because these guys have a lot of risk and miscut equity.
Yep. They absolutely most certainly do. Wyndham Clark, we talked in passing, didn't spend a lot of time, but we know his strengths are strokes gained off the tee and strokes gained putting. If that works out, do we just play him with Cameron Champ and a couple of these other guys that have the exact same profile and hope that that strategy actually works out this week? Or can we play him in more builds, or do we not play him at all?
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind that. That's where I think it can be very important to kind of skill set stack, build some aggressive and contest selection. Like if you're playing single entry, I would strongly recommend not, having 2 or 3 wild men in there, because that's over leveraged most likely. But if you're talking about a $20 lineup where you got to beat 100,000 people, these are the type of guys, when you get them on the right week, Wyndham Clark, I mean, those are crazy upside type plays. So I like that strategy. You just want to make sure, again, I'll say a shout out to our tools, our data team, you, Alex, and the guys do a great job helping you not just pick the players, but put them in the right lineup, because that's half the battle. You might have the right players in the wrong thing.
Let's talk about Sebastian Munoz for a second, because I see chat 3 different people, 4, 5. Yeah, I understand. 9,200 firm seems steep, but then you look and you put aside the withdrawal that he had in the middle of the year. He hasn't missed a cut since the Farmers, but he only also has 1 top 10 since then, which is the Byron Nelson. I don't know. I don't know what to do with him. I guess I'm more prone to go to Tony Finau, because I think that I've played Finau at 9,400 before and he's given return there. Whereas Munoz 9,200, it just feels like a little bit of a trap to me, because it's not like he's going to be low owned. He's going to be the same owned he is at 7,800.
Yeah. Munoz, listen, he's a good player. He's got a lot of like first round leader type equity, showdown equity, and even full round. He's been in it, but he has melted more often than not when he's been in contention lately. I don't really like the spot. I'll be honest. I'm not saying that I think he's going to play terrible, but when I look at the pivots that I can make in the same range, it's not that hard for me to find a couple $100 for Finau, Hatton, Hadwin, Kirk. I could bump to Thigala. I could bump to Rasmus. I just don't know how often I want to get to Munoz. He's more of a Bermuda pure guy. I kind of target him down in Florida more than anywhere else. So I'm not sure this is the spot for me with him.
Buddy Eric is chiming in. Just saw that he's in there. What is up, buddy? He says, can't spell Munoz without no. And listen, after what I've been watching with him in Prize Picks, I don't understand it either. But
no, but Uno is in there too. And Uno is a sweet game. So you got to factor
Uno
that
is
in.
Actually a sweet card game.
You see? He didn't think about that.
My favorites. Gin Rummy and that are two of my top go-tos.
Yeah, those are good stuff.
Let's see. Look at this. We're giving card games. We've done theme parks before. You don't just get the golf picks here on this live before lock show, folks. But in any case, you don't want to fade Eric right now. I saw he had some like 10x Prize Picks thing last night with MLB, and that's a couple in a row. I mean,
the dice are hot.
Yeah. Follow him on Twitter. That's where he puts his picks out there, at Aaron Lundquist. So, okay, let's go on. I have been nice enough to Eric here for probably the next 3 weeks. So now we'll talk about Bermuda Ben Martin, a top 10 last week. I know it's Corn Ferry Tour. I don't really care about that though, because he's played good golf in a couple of different tours, including the PGA this year. 6,500. I mean, are you willing to go there? Is he going to make the cut, or what's going to happen with him this week?
Yeah, I mean, I'm always a sucker for this guy, and this is obviously the top of the field isn't, but at the bottom, this is a Corn Ferry event. Like, there's no doubt that to make the cut, you're going to be competing against players that are that caliber. Maybe not to win and top 10 and whatnot, but I think Ben Martin has shown he's got miles of experience, and unlike a lot of the guys, I think the big difference for me, he is priced in the mid sixes. This is not, Ben Martin and he's 7,300 and that's a huge price bump. He is where he belongs, and he does unlock some of the permutations I'm after.
Yeah, I really don't mind it. Going up him or like Robert Streb, but you like Ben over Streb this week?
Yeah, I do. Streb is another guy that I play like once every 3 years, and he's good for about 6 holes. But when you really look at what he's doing, I don't see it. He has not shown much of anything.
Okay. I must have missed something. Okay, no, we're good. I got it. Let's talk about, let's see. I think we got a couple more minutes in this section before we go on to our betting cards, a couple of lineup builds, and then the hot takes there. Brandon Thornberry. Let's talk about him for a minute. You probably remember him, or maybe you don't, as a guy that got an invitation to the FedEx before it became the FedEx St. Jude, I want to say. Came in 4th as an amateur and was like, yeah, I hope this helps me, but I'm going to go back to school and stick it out. Here's a guy that shouldn't have gone back to school. He probably should have just collected the money when he could have, because he has not been seen on the Pro Tour, or on the PGA Tour, I should say, since. But he Monday qualifies into the event, 6,200. A guy that used to have some talent. Is he going to make it back ever?
I don't know. I will say, unlike most of the made up people that I blindly say no, I've seen this guy play. I remember that distinctly. This is not a guy. Yes, it's a big opportunity because he's had some lulls, but he's got some experience out here, and we're starting to get to, there's no one down here. So you're going to have to find someone if you really need to go this low. I would probably recommend don't go this low, but if you do, he doesn't stand out as a worst play down there. He has shown he can do it on tour.
I believe he fits the build as well that we were just talking about with Wyndham Clark. He's a very Wyndham Clark type player. Just crushes the ball, not great with his irons, good putter when he gets on. Okay. Callum Tarrant, we've used his name maybe once this year. He is up at 6,700. I believe he's one of those guys that did end up getting qualifying through, if I'm not mistaken, on the U.S. Open. Has made 4 straight cuts, if you include the Corn Ferry Tour 4 cuts ago. So maybe he makes it 5 straight.
I've never played him, so that would be a new opportunity. He's one of these guys that he seems to be, Vince Whaley was doing this for a little while. He seems to be cashing checks, but is he getting you any placement points? Can he get you any placement points? I worry about that a little. Is he playable? I would say yes. Him and Justin Lower are right there. Satoshi is right there. But again, I'm not sure what that upside really is. Probably pretty likely to make the cut, but not do much.
Yeah, I agree. I just saw Benny's message there in our chat about Scott Gachowski. Man, this is just what this tournament is yielding. Now, Gachowski, here's what I can tell you about him, Ben. Plays with a yellow golf ball. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, that's suspicious.
Okay.
Bubba did that. Someone else did that. Sabatini, maybe.
Yeah, for a little while. I don't know if he does anymore.
It's frowned upon.
Bubba did as well for
Bubba definitely did.
Yeah. Just doesn't work out.
I'm not about that.
I do see that he made the cut at the Corn Ferry Tour event last week, the Advent Health. Maybe that was actually a couple of weeks ago. I'm out on Scott Gachowski. Sorry, Benny. Guy I want to talk to you about, though, that is certainly the TJ Vogel of this year. Continues to Monday qualify. It's a good story, if nothing else. Flavin needs one more made cut by my calculations to get himself into the Corn Ferry Tour finals. Will this be the week that he gets his necessary points?
I think so. He's a pretty good player.
He is. Continues to get it done. Monday qualifying, let me tell you, those fields are pretty strong. Sometimes they can look stronger than the back half of fields like this, to be honest.
Yeah, and I do think there's something, not to dive into kind of a tangent, but people talk about the pressure on Sunday and whatnot, and there's got to be massive pressure in majors and whatnot. There's also got to be an insane amount of pressure when you are playing to make a straight living. Monday qualifying, these are your chances to change your life. So this guy, he knows what he's doing, obviously. I don't know how much talent he has in terms of the best, but he is, credit to him, making it work out there. So I think he actually plays pretty well again.
I hope I'm definitely rooting for him to make the weekend here. Don't know if he'll make my player pool per se this week. certainly not more than 3% or
Mhm.
something like that, but a name that I wanted to bring up. All right, let's talk about our betting card, because it's a very interesting week when you have, such a strong top half of the field. When I say top half, I really mean the top 5 guys. You got Rory at 10 or 11 to 1. You got Cam Smith somewhere around 14 or 15 to 1. I started with those two, Ben, and matched them up with top 5s. Then it's really my focus on the each way with the bottom of the board. I think that because you get a stronger field, you're getting longer odds on some of these guys down below, like Cameron Champ, we already mentioned. You can find him through, of course, our OddsShopper. I believe his best odds are on DraftKings, about 130 to 1 there. And my other two that I had, JT Poston and Matt Wallace were the other two guys that I saw there. David Lipsky. I was deciding between Wallace and Lipsky. That's my main betting card. How about you?
Yeah, so I mean, my main betting card, I will be getting a refund as I bet CT Pan up and down my card, and that did not work out, and some of those other guys. But I think up top, it's funny, we didn't really talk about Matthew Fitzpatrick much at all here.
And, oh my God, I think I just omitted his name.
Yeah, after his putting last week, it's not hard to wonder why you did that. He had his career worst showing on the PGA Tour. He lost 7.5 strokes putting.
Worst.
I do think that he will play pretty well here, and I'm putting that mildly. He is on my betting card as one of my favorite outrights. I put Tony Finau on there, and then as we work down, you mentioned some of those kind of high upside guys like Brandon Wu, Patrick Rogers. I'm not sure that they can win the tournament, but you want to shop around using OddsShopper. You're going to find their like top 10 and top 20 still at massively plus odds. So you could put the lotto ticket on outrights north of 100 to 1. But you can also get 5, 6, 7 to 1, and those hit at a much, much higher clip, of course. And those can be the bankroll boosts that you're really looking for. So I'm going to throw those guys out there. I'll be honest though, I didn't see I looked at Fratelli a little bit in the betting market. He's someone that we've seen. He comes out of nowhere and he just, he can win a tournament. He's made a lot of cuts in a row somehow. He's made 8 straight cuts, but he hasn't shown that upside. So he's a name though. Dylan Fratelli, I wouldn't be stunned to see play well this week.
Yeah, interesting. Wow, he is playing very consistent golf right
quietly.
Now. Typically that does yield to a climax type of start eventually. So now I know he's got the T8 at the Valero, Texas. But since then, it's just been a lot of consistently good starts. So maybe it is. Maybe it's coming this week.
Yeah, that's the hope. And he's shown it. The thing I like about Fratelli, not to jump in too crazy, is that he has the ability to get hot in any area. We have seen him gain 10 strokes with the irons. We have seen him gain 10 strokes nearly with the putter. He's a good off the tee player generally.
Chipping in every other round. Then he also added the distance when Bryson was going through that crazy, spout. He kind of took on the Bryson type of approach there and certainly added some distance. So, yeah, I'm definitely warming up to Fratelli a little more as we talk about it. There was one other guy that I wanted to bring up. Now, let's just go into our lineup builds. I think he'll come up here. I guess since I wrote it down, I really like Rory and Cam this week. I kind of mentioned that to you. So let's build that. 7,300 per player. I think that's still in a good range. Who's the first person you're clicking if you got to go 7,300 or below for these rest 4?
So yeah, we go Rory and Cam. We're going to have to get some salary relief. I think it would be, it's not going to open a ton up, but I think that JT Poston right there is a name that I'm pretty comfortable with. He's 7,200. That's going to kind of just allow us to fill one of the spots. Now we have 3 left. We've got plenty of options.
Yeah, I think David Lipsky is one that I brought up a couple of times. Him or Wallace right there. I think I'll click Lipsky here. I think he's just been a little bit more consistent and has shown the upside. So now we're at 7,350. It's do we want to go and go down so that we can get an Aaron type of rye, or do we want to just stay in this range? And there's Jaeger there, there's Grillo there, there's Schwab there. I mean, we do have a couple of different options.
You just said it. Jaeger and Rio, Schwab and Wallace. You've got Smalley is there. Tyler Duncan is there. There's a million different 2v2s. For me, I don't think you're getting that much more going all the way up to Aaron Rye, because the downside, you're going to like Ben Martin. I don't think that's worth it. I'd rather take the 2v2 with 7,300 guys.
Grillo or no. We're doing Grillo here because I think he's a good play. So Jaeger or Schwab?
It would be Jaeger for me. Close, but Jaeger.
Joseph Bramlett's a name that we haven't talked about. I saw he was medalist at his U.S. Open thing. That's a guy that I'd be intrigued about that, given that he is a form player, ball striking type of guy. I like Poston better than him this week, though.
Agree. Yeah, I like Poston too.
All right, let's do our second one, which I have us doing 3 this week. I want to do no 10K. I believe there's going to be a ton of ownership up there. So if you really want to build contrarian, skip out on the whole 10K. Does it have to be Corey Connors and or Matt Fitzpatrick, or maybe both?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know about has to, but that's probably where I'm looking. You can, the good thing about the balance build, you're going to be able to get a lot more of that 9K range if you want it. So I would probably pair them if I had to. Would
you go and add in a Hatton or a Finau here, or would you take Fitzpatrick out to add both those guys in?
I mean, you could definitely do that. So if you go Finau, Fitzy, Connors, you still have north of 7. And I actually like this. What I think people kind of fall into the trap, they think stars and scrubs has to be 10K to 6K. You can do stars and scrubs where you go like 3 9K and 2 6K. And that's a really wild build. So I actually think let's put 3 9K guys in there and see what we can do.
Yeah, that leaves us in the 7,000 range again. We both agreed that you should probably fade the Doug Gim thing, but I think, yep. Got it. Brandon Wu?
No, I was saying repeat the 3 9K y'all put in. I missed
Oh, sorry. Connors, Fitzpatrick, Finau. My bad. I'm looking at the time. I'm like, I'm supposed to get out of here.
It's like, he doesn't want to hear about these tangents with Brandon Wu. Get to it. He's got
all right. Connors, Fitzpatrick, Finau. Then do we want to go Brandon Wu here because of the pricing?
Yeah, I think. Yeah, when you go Fitzy, Connors, Finau up top, you have a lot of options, and I think you can go. I kind of like going Brandon Wu and another guy down here. Like you could go Brandon Wu, Wyndham, Clark, and then you're right back in that range with Schwab and Jaeger and Poston and those guys.
Right, I'm gonna make you give me one more because I'm gonna say Clark for the Bombers.
That's fair. Yep. Okay. Well, this is where maybe I'll get a little. What if we put Brent Martin in there?
Yes. Okay.
77 left. Yeah, then you could go to Patrick Rogers or Nick Taylor or Fratelli, who I really like.
Yeah, you know what? I'm into the Fratelli call. Unless we need him for no, let's use him here. I like it. Okay. All right, now let's do the Bombers. And I'm gonna couple this with my hot take. So there's a perfect time for it. Leading the field in driving distance at the Puerto Rico Open this year was a guy named Chris Gutterup. Now, you may not have heard of him, or you've probably heard of him now this week. He's a guy that just turned pro, just ended his college tour, came in 7th in the PGA Tour University, but that's because he didn't have any wins, and you get a lot of points for the wins in the PGA Tour U. But he has finished no worse than 16th in his last 7 starts. That does include the Puerto Rico Open and obviously a bunch of college starts. And like I said, if he leads the field in driving distance to Puerto Rico Open, I'm going to guess coming out of college that that's kind of what he builds his game off of. So if we're going to give this kid a go this week, given the fact that he did just medalist also at his U.S. Open qualifying, so he's going to get this week and next week to kind of jumpstart his PGA Tour career. Is this a spot, given the field strength, that maybe we want to give this kid a go this week? I mean, I guess I'm saying if we're going to get a chance to play a lot of these guys at the Travelers in a couple of weeks, I like this field a lot better than the Travelers to play him in.
Yeah, I'd agree. I definitely agree with that. I don't, sounds like he'd be something at one of those long drive competitions. I don't know. I have no idea if this kid has the talent. You and Eric, I would say you and Eric Lindquist, I have the benefit of doing shows with both of you. He gave a rousing, he's on board with this guy too. So
let's go, Eric, if you're still watching.
You guys are all about it. I don't have anyone better.
I think for me, if the Live Golf Tour is going to steal all these guys, I want an opportunity to play them when I can.
Good point.
I love finding the Colin Morikawas and the Norman Jongs. I think we fall somewhere in the middle with this guy. I don't think we're going to get Morikawa. but I actually think he could be something. He's shown himself. Norman Jong, when he came out, made no cuts. He never came in the top 10. Gutter Up's already come in the top 10 of a PGA Tour event. So I think we've got that going for us. I think it's a really good spot to use him. Now let's go to Clark. I clicked Rory, obviously, first. If we're doing bombers, it has to be Rory. So we got Clark, we got Gutter Up. Let's see. Tony Finau. Yes, no?
Yes.
Okay.
Finau, Gutter Up.
Is it got to be Thigala here? I mean, that's kind of what he does, right?
Yeah, let's see if we can get Thigala in here. And
that leaves us 8,200. Could go all the way down to Cameron Champ. It kind of fits the build.
Yeah, again, when you build skill set stacks, price is not nearly as important because you're building something that's going to be weird. You're going to leave money on the table. You're going for a skill set. So leaving $400, you're playing this lineup in the large $20. There's no doubt about it.
Yep.
I like lineups like that. They're very, very effective when they go right.
Bingo. When they go right. This week could be a plotter's week, given Carl Peterson in 2010. The way I've thought about it is I feel like the game has transformed really over the last 5 years. Maybe I'm not the only one that feels this way. I think it's pretty common knowledge that it's really been a focus on driving distance. So that's why I feel like this week we're going to get a little bit more of guys overpowering this golf course than we saw back then. I could be dead wrong, but that's kind of just what I've seen and what I believe could happen this week. So, all right, let's go into our hot takes. I already talked about Chris Gutter Up. I think this guy gets off to a really good start on the PGA Tour. I think he bests Colin Morikawa's T35 that Morikawa did. And I got him coming inside the top 20. Right now, he's 400 to 1 on DraftKings to win. So that's going to give him somewhere around the 10 to 12 to 1 on the top 20, Ben. I'm all good. That sounds like a really good starting point. One of my most favorite weeks betting of all time was the Morikawa Wolf 3M Open. I mean, that was just so fun. The odds makers had no idea of these guys yet. They were both north of 100 to 1. I'm not saying we're going to get that with this guy, but it's fun to see it out for the first couple of weeks because sometimes the odds makers are just way too, they're way behind on it.
I mean, there's no doubt that we have seen some type of transformation that guys come out ready to play. Yep. There's rarely any they got to get accustomed to these guys come out and they can play. And maybe this kid will be in that contingent. Now, is it my turn? Is it my hot take here? Is this what we're doing?
Yeah, it's your turn. Sorry.
No. I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to spin this. All right. My hot take from the clouds. If you want to name a true 1%er, he is 6,500. He's 18 to 1 for a top 10, 7 to 1 for a top 20. It's the Australian Cameron Percy. He has not played well, but what I like about him is when he does play well, he's giving you big upside. 7th in Puerto Rico, miscut at Valsport, 4th at Corrales, miscut at Wells Fargo, miscut at Byron Nelson. I don't really like those courses for him. At times, he's an extremely good iron player. His putting is bad. There's no doubt about it. But this is a guy that has shown at times there is a flash. And 18 to 1 for a top 10 to me is ridiculous. I know I'm kind of rewriting history, but he's made 2 of his last 5 starts have been top 10s on the PGA Tour. That's a massive number for a guy that most likely finds a miscut waiting for him. But when he's on, Cameron Percy's not the craziest play in the mid 6s.
I know betting is maybe a little bit more widespread legal in Canada than it is here in the U.S., although we're catching up quickly. I wouldn't be surprised if Cam Percy's got some money on himself here this week. Seems like
come on, Cam Percy.
Get down.
Get on board.
That's some pretty good stuff. All right, we have got the MLB Live Before Lock coming up 5:45, so just in about 45 minutes here. You can check that out. Then we've got the NBA. It's Deeper Dive first, correct, if I'm not mistaken. Then you get the Live Before Lock plus the post-lock lock show. That's a lot of fun. I enjoy doing that. I tuned in last time. I'm a Celtics fan, so I may not have watched the game tonight, but I'm definitely in. I enjoy watching it. Although the first 2 games, I would like a close game all the way down tonight. That'd be nice, maybe a last-second shot.
I hope it's 200 to 9 Celtics. I hope they win by 190 points. I don't want a close game at all.
You're on the Celtics tonight?
I am going to be. I have not bet the game yet, but I'm trending that direction. And again, for all those picks, I'll just quickly say, If you're looking for picks, go to OddsShopper. We have quick 5-minute videos. You get rapid fire plays from me, from everyone there. A fun time, and get in our Discord as well. So I'm kind of rooting for you boys tonight, though.
I'd love to hear it. All right, before we get out of here, though, let's tell about the free premium tools that we have that you guys can get access to today. And because it's only 5 o'clock, you can get access to all of them. NBA, you're going to get player projections for that slate we just talked about. For the MLB, which is coming up 5:45, you can get the main slate ownership projections. And for PGA, you get the golfer rankings. That's how Alex ranks all of the players in our PGA projections. Check that out, of course. Also, you want our plays and allocations? Well, all you got to do is go to the Pro Plays tool every week before 8 o'clock on Wednesday Eastern time. We get those plays updated. Basically, you can see it, and if you know how we play, pretty much, the max is about 40 or 50% on a golfer. Number one guy that's ranked there will get that allocation. That's exactly how it goes. Alex, Ben, and I are pretty on point about that. Eric as well. So check that out. A really great tool for all of you that are MMEing this week. So, all right. Lastly, Ben, let's talk just quickly about satellites into the Mega Millionaire Maker. Do you play them? And if so, do you approach them with your top GPP lineup, or do you try and be more conservative? And once you talk about your strategy, I'll talk about some of the buy-ins that people can do for it.
Yeah, I do play them. I've actually changed up some of the things that I play, but I think, again, the only advice I would give, understand what you're doing. If you are playing a 70-man winner take all, you're going to have to do something. You don't need to get crazy, but that's different than structuring in like a 5-man or a 3-man or a 10-man. So I usually just take one of my favorite lineups, 6 of 6. You could be one of a couple people that have 6 of 6 and something like that. So your goal should just be an effective lineup. You will leverage without being crazy because there's just not that many people in those satellites.
$13 is your lowest buy-in amount. You're going up against 402 people, not, as we've talked about, hundreds of thousands, or even in the 200. You're going up against, roughly 2,000 people every week. So 402 people. I use it as if I make a main lineup, I probably can put it in anything. If I make a cash lineup and a GPP, I'm likely trying to make a combination of both. But again, how I play it, if I make one main lineup, it's going in every single contest. Again, that's just how I play. But I know some people like to play cash. Ben and I are very transparent. We don't play a lot of it. If we did, I would use a blend GPP cash, or I would not use a cash lineup. And I also wouldn't use a strictly GPP lineup either, because they can be a little too aggressive for a 402-man field. So good luck with everybody on that. Ben, you already mentioned we've got some great content coming out next week for the major. Anything else we want to have people look forward to until then?
No, of course. Just you have any questions at DFS Golfer 23 at JazzRaz DFS. Certainly plenty to talk about. Things are expanding in the golf world seemingly every hour. So just as always, thanks for hopping in, guys. You have any questions, you hit us there, you hit us on Discord, and we'll be back next week.
Yeah, that's it, everybody. Join us next week for the U.S. Open back near my home in Brookline, Massachusetts, just over the border there. So looking forward to that. And until then, everybody, good luck, and we will see you on the other side. Cheers.